Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Jo Yardley. My name is Drax Dupree, and with us this week, a guest that seldomly graces this podcast with her presence is Jo Yardley. Hi, Jo.
Hello.
So before we go into a big show today with tons of guests, actually the most guests, I'm sorry, it's not all about you this week. And I have to come bite my tongue too. We're going to talk about the war of the social worlds, all these social VR worlds that are competing against each other. And as we know, Jo, there can only be one standing, right? I mean, there can only be one that can survive at the end.
No.
Maybe there'll be two, but it's probably going to be Sansar.
Maybe there'll be hundreds.
Before the crowd joins us, Jo,
yes.
An article came out. I want your 2 cents on this article. The article is called, what is it called? The Digital Ruins of a Forgotten Future.
Great title.
Great title. Oh my God. You know, these people get paid a lot of money at The Atlantic to come up with these titles. Anyway, so this is a very long form article, really in depth about Second Life. The writer, Leslie Jameson, went in-world.
Well done.
That is good, right? So let's point out the positive.
Yeah, so far so good.
So far so good. Of course, then halfway down the article, and she actually very respectfully profiles a lot of people that we also know, some of them from the disabled community. Halfway down the article, she writes that she wants to take a shower after she goes into Second Life.
Well, that is, you know, I had that in my early days when I was visiting Second Life for the first couple of times.
But what does that mean? I mean, I think that
it means you go somewhere and it makes you feel dirty because dirty things are happening there.
It's just perpetuating such a cliche. And with the title and then the subtitle, I also want to say Second Life was supposed to be the future of the internet, but then Facebook came along. That is so lame. That comparison, please.
There is no competition. There's no comparison.
It's apples and Oreo cookies.
Oh.
Oreo cookies. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm going to get rid of the apples and go with the Oreo cookies.
Easy choice.
So, yeah.
Well, you know.
But what do you think, but overall, I mean, people should really read this. What do you overall think?
I think it's a pretty decent article. It's long, it's in depth, and it is an outsider's view. That, you know, sometimes we've been inside this world too long to actually, you know, to remember what it can feel like when you've never heard of it before or never visited.
Yeah, that's actually good. That's a good perspective. You're absolutely right.
No, she says a few things we can disagree with because her experience is, of course, not as long and detailed as ours.
Right, a 10-year tenure at inside a world is hard to beat with even the 2-month kind of investigation where you have to take a shower every day.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, just she should probably come back in a few weeks and try again.
Well, I've been trying to be nice. Of course, I had to kind of I bit my tongue a little bit, but then I guess I also kind of criticized it with the shower comment. And also another one that really bugs me. Loki Elliott already commented on Twitter. She writes, I'm trying to look for it, but I'm going to paraphrase. She writes something like that. Everything in Second Life is a visual cliche and everything looks so neat. That is just factually not true.
Yeah, I mean, that is the places.
Why didn't she visit 1920s Berlin?
Exactly, it's a dump. And I wrote that in my comment to her. You know, I have people paying to live in dingy, damp, stinky, tiny apartments where you can literally hear everything your neighbors say. You know, every Second Life experience, even of people who've been here for years, is based on what they've seen and done. And, you know, I know people who in Second Life do nothing except go to the same club every single day. There are people in Second Life who do nothing but 1920s Berlin. It's all they know. It's all they care about. So if people say, you know, everyone's walking around like a tart and doing the hanky-panky all the time, you know, there are people saying, well, that's not my Second Life. I've never seen that. and and the other way around. So if you're hanging from chandeliers in BDM clubs all the time, 1920s Berlin to you is a foreign world.
And you are actually putting the finger on it, and that actually makes it almost impossible with the framing of any type of story that looks at it as sort of a tech entity, because you got to look at it as a world. You got to look at it as at least as a country.
It's like saying the internet is stupid because I've only visited one website with videos of kittens, which is great, but after a couple of days you think, is that all there is? And you have to look at Second Life as some sort of version of the internet, because every sim is different, every person is different, every experience is different. We have sims that looks fantastic and amazing and modern and up to date with the newest technology, and we have sims that haven't been touched literally in 10 years. So you can't, even we who have been in Second Life for such a long time can't really describe all of Second Life.
Yeah, but we say that. See, and that's what bugs me. Again, I mean, it could have been even better if that were acknowledged. For example, you remember the Atlas Obscura article, which was great because he acknowledged at the very end, it was in one paragraph, he said, I was told that there's a lot of sex and stuff like that. I didn't see it because I didn't seek it out. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but I come to the conclusion that there is something for everyone, and that's it. And that to me is brilliant. And what strikes me as odd is that this person, Leslie Jameson here from The Atlantic, and actually, by the way, I'm trying to get her on the podcast, that she goes in depth and really profiles people. Again, Gentle Heron from Virtual Ability is in there, and she profiles certain residents and really kind of with
respect,
sensitivity and respect, exactly, that the conclusion that she comes to me, that's what I get out of it. It comes out of a very privileged position that she even actually acknowledges in sort of like 2 sentences, like, oh, maybe I'm young and I'm kind of like hanging out with the hip crowd and wherever she lives, I don't know, is maybe that I don't get it. Yeah, I don't fundamentally get it. But that again assumes that people go into Second Life because there's feeling a loss in their physical world, which is fundamentally a flawed,
Unfortunately, we are a little bit guilty of that as well, because the best way to show how great Second Life is by showing examples of those people who really need it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because is true. I'm doing it for fun because I love history. That's it. A bit of education. Ooh, nice. Someone who just goes dancing and chatting all day, that's great and that's a lot of fun, but that is not the best example of why Second Life is so brilliant. So everyone who writes about it or makes documentary about it, of course they're going to talk about people who are handicapped or who can't leave the house.
I'm totally guilty of that, and I actually stopped doing that, and you're absolutely right. I always pointed that out, and I realized after a while that this I'm digging my own grave, because if I say, like, look at this person who is physically disabled, she can fly, and then people go, oh, I understand because they can't get around town. Oh yeah, that's cool for them. And which infuriates me even more, because then it kind of exposes that kind of hypocrisy, like, oh yeah, for the poor disabled people, we have a little playground for them, that's fine.
Yeah, but that's the way it is. And the best thing about Second Life is, or I'm not sure if the best thing, but the thing about Second Life is that you don't understand what it's good for until you find what's good for you.
Right.
Because, this is my second Life. I walked around like a noob. I didn't understand it. I thought it was just perverts running around naked doing dirty stuff, or boring shopping, which is even worse. I didn't like it. I didn't understand it. I thought they were all freaks and weirdos and losers, and left, never to return, or so I thought, until I found that I could perhaps use Second Life for time travel.
And until you realized, wait a minute, you looked into the mirror and go like, hey, I am also a loser. I could go back in and mingle and
I am now, but when I started Second Life, I was really hip and cool, honest. Secret agent and stuff.
Yeah, when I started doing heroin, it was the same thing. I was still kind of... Anyways.
Yeah. that really is the key to Second Life, and that's why it's so important to get that first experience so right, because you have to find that thing that makes you tick, that works for you. And that's different for everyone. I mean, even for the journalist, if she had found something that she loves, is obsessed with, that she could do any day of the week, if she, or the place that she wants to travel to but can't. If she found something like that, the article would be completely different. And I am convinced there is something for everyone in Second Life.
If she would have realized that she could actually do like machinima reportage. No, I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, you're making such a good point.
I mean, I don't know her. I don't know what her passion is. Maybe it's crochet, or maybe it's, pressing wildflowers. If she would find one of those amazing gardens in Second Life, or, nature reserves, or with lots of flowers, she may fall in love with that. I mean, I don't know her. I don't know what her passion is, but I think there really is something for everyone. And if there isn't, you can build it yourself. And that really is the secret of Second Life.
Okay, we're going to bring the other people in. I was just looking up her bio. She wrote a book called Empathy Exams and the Gin Closet. So basically, she needs to find gin.
As the Dutch have invented gin, I'm sure I've got a bottle of gin on my table in Second Life. See, if she'd come to Berlin and sat at my table and saw that bottle of gin.
But here's the thing: he said she wrote a book about how can we feel other people's pain, especially when pain can be assumed, distorted, or performed.
With a hammer. What?
Right. Okay. Anyways, I'm bringing in the other people. We have a big panel today. So little musical interlude, real quick. Here's Susan Jewell, who performs in Sansar now, and we'll bring in the other people.
She covered her hair. She laid down there. There were flowers everywhere. That's what she said. That's what she said. And she got on her knees. She folded her hands, she bent down her head. She knew right then it would never be right. Not just this time, but every time. And she lit up a smoke. She tried not to talk, confessed to the wall. You can't talk back. And she pulled up her dress. She put on her shoes. She stood in her mess. And she did not love you like she wanted to. She just wasn't there. She didn't care. She stripped you bare. And she could not be who you really wanted her to be. She looked in your eyes. She said goodbye.
All right, so that was Susan Jewell. We are now joined by a whole gaggle of folks. So I'm just going to go left to right. We're taping this on Skype. So I'm going to go left to right with the icons. We got Adam Frisby, who is the CEO of Sinewave Entertainment, the maker of SignSpace, which was Space previously. But, of course, Facebook comes out with Spaces, and then who cares if SignSpace was 10 years in awesome development and 1 year in public now, right, Adam?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So this is Adam, who is going to talk to us about why they're not in drunk on Kool-Aid with VR. Then we got Jeremy Owen Turner, aka Onto Disto, performance artist, composer, designer, teacher. We got Menethol from High Fidelity. So I brought in Menethol because he's going to obviously be sort of the corporate spokesperson for High Fidelity and say that Sansar doesn't work.
I'm definitely not a representative of High Fidelity, just saying I'm more of a mercenary.
Menethol is a mercenary. He does anything for money.
I used to be a mercenary in real life. Oh, sorry.
And then right next to, I mean, on the 2D screen is Chaos Princess, who is in my hometown of Munich. And if Menethol is not corporate enough for High Fidelity,
I'm the Hi-Fi Crusader.
That's right. trash everything, destroy everything, and high fidelity is the only one standing. Now, Galen is joining us. Galen is a programmer who I met in Sansar, but he's a veteran Second Lifer. Pretty much has already the market of Sansar scripting carved out for him. He's the boss. So Galen is gonna fist fight with Chaos over what is the superior platform. And then there's me, and then there's Jo. We don't have anything to say. So initial statements, quick answers. Adam, why don't you care about VR, and why is Science Space not VR compatible?
Well, that's an interesting question. If you go to our downloads page, you will find a VR viewer. That said, though, I've got more to talk about that next week. But the short answer is that it's just not got the adoption that the desktop does. We have got mobile clients. We've actually now got our iOS client out as well for beta testers. Still rather alpha-y, but look, we think that there's more use on both desktop and mobile than there is in VR at the moment. That's not to say VR isn't cool. There are some very cool parts to be able to get into a world and actually experience those things. But 99% of your users are never going to touch that. Either they don't have the hardware, they don't have the space, they don't have the desire. I know there's a lot of problems with VR still, and this is what we talked about last time. It's just not consumer friendly yet.
Jumping in real quick, I even noticed a subtle messaging change in Linden Labs' official Sansar Twitter account, for example. They are now in every tweet almost, they say, well, come on in here, experience this, both VR and desktop. And it's interesting because it was all like, we're just VR is the priority, and yes, sure, desktop, blah, 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 but VR. And now in their messaging, they include that much more. Now, Jeremy, aka Ontodisto, you've been on some of the Atlas hoppings in Sansar with us, and you've also dabbled in high fidelity. What's your take on where are we right now with these social VR worlds? Is the adoption too slow? Does it matter to you? I mean, you're not employed by any of these companies. Maybe it's fine if it's a niche. While they worry, you may not. You still have fun. What do you think?
Well, considering that it's just right in the beginning of VR world development, I think it's quite good for 2017. I think there's a future in social VR. I think there's a big future in social AR and the mixed realities between them. Maybe more of a future in social AR at some point. But at least right now, I mean, I love social VR. I don't want to go back to desktop VR at all, honestly. I'm kind of hooked on... I've totally drunk the Kool-Aid of VR, and that's my interest now is strictly immersive social VR. And, all of the different worlds have their own strengths and weaknesses that have come out in immersive VR, and it'd be nice to try and integrate them into one mega world that, compensated for every other issue.
Yes.
But Jeremy, are you saying that, like, because of the availability of immersive VR via headset, something like Second Life to you now seems kind of outdated? Like, could we compare it to a black and white movie or even a talkie, let's say, a silent movie versus a talkie now?
Good movies.
Yeah,
I know, Joe, like those are the only movies that matter.
Yeah, are there color movies now?
Wouldn't the more accurate be like comparing like books to film? As in the early film, books and early film.
I was going to get there because Richard Bartle, who we had via Science Space on the program a couple of weeks ago, he makes that point. He's worried about the increasing visual fidelity because he's worried that we're not able to imagine anymore. You know, Richard Bartle, obviously the creator of MUDs, of text-based virtual worlds.
Yeah, they've been saying that since books, though.
Jeremy, your take on, I mean, is Second Life now over for you because you got all this other awesome candy?
Yeah, it feels over to me. I feel spoiled being in immersive VR because a lot of my friends are still stuck in the desktop world, and I feel like I don't want to leave them behind, but it feels a bit like that. And but what I like about Second Life still, and I think it's why a lot of people are still there, is because a lot of the things are still, well, I won't say finished. It always feels like a beta everywhere, but they're used to the in-world building tools. They have a large community still, at least of artists. They have a large community. So, I mean, I understand why they're still there. It'd be nice to try and make in-world building tools, very intuitive and immersive VR, and then lower the consumer cost.
Yes.
Yeah, then lower the consumer costs to get into there. I mean, Microsoft and those kind of places now have cheaper headsets, and the video cards are getting cheaper. So at some point, there might be more of an incentive to go into immersive social VR.
Yeah, at some point, but that's going to take a while still.
A long while.
Menethol, I want to go to you next. We're going to still make the first rounds, and then we can go all over the place. But Menethol, now you said the comparison with books versus movies, so you may elaborate on that. But since you started this other thing, like you're hesitant to say that this is going to happen right now. I mean, High Fidelity, where you're most active right now, really kind of shaping the world. I mean, in my view, with your avatar and with the stuff that you're making, which is awesome, you feel like, I mean, the High Fidelity's been around for like, how long? Like over 3 years now? And it's still not really taking off, although Philip Rosell is the best salesman that we have in this arena.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing about High Fidelity is it would be saying as if it's an ore in the side of a mountain, and we are trying to make an iron bar out of it. And it's still an ore. It's not refined. It's very, very rough. I mean, it's not even rough. It's in its base elements. So it's really hard. I mean, like, there's a lot of things that need to be pushed forward. Usability is one really important one. New user experience is another one. And what I'm interested in is usually avatars. So my character in High Fidelity happens to be a fox. So might be a bit strange, but some Second Life users might also agree.
I think High Fidelity is absolutely taking off. Like, if you regard that at one moment in time, it's only 3,000 people in the whole world wearing a headset. So if we have like 30 or 60 people at our Friday meetings, we have like 1 or 2% of all the world's population doing VR at the moment. So we're taking off like hell.
That is a great way of looking at it.
That's a good point. Is that an actual statistic that there's at any one point in time only 3,000 people in the world have a headset on?
Yeah.
We should research it and then make that a social media thing.
Does that include PlayStation?
We should ask Philip for the source.
I don't think that includes the PlayStation side, because they have probably the highest amount of headsets sold.
It was like regarding their high quality headsets, Rift.
Yeah, but PSVR is actually kind of decent. It doesn't have the fidelity in the controllers, but the visual quality is pretty good.
Now you guys are already talking about specs, and now that brings me back in because, and Galen, I want to bring in Galen, and then later we'll talk about specs versus people, what's more important. But Galen, we talked off the air prior a little bit about the fact that and you seem to have this similar perception that Sansar is actually not as much in the news as it should be. So my perception is that and that goes for High Fidelity to some extent, but let's talk about Sansar real quick because you're very active in Sansar.
You mind if I interrupt? I kind of want to chime in on this. This is actually a fascinating starter topic too. I kind of see what we call virtual reality right now as a transitional technology. And here's what I mean. I don't think there would have been widespread adoption of color television as fast as it happened if it wasn't for the fact that the first commercial color televisions were compatible with black and white content. That may seem odd and obvious, like why wouldn't it be compatible? But there were different technologies for color TV, and the one that won out was the one that still accepted old black and white broadcasts. I think that's exactly what's going on in High Fidelity and Sansar, at the very least. Both of them, there's enormous pressure from the majority of people who are still working on desktop, in desktop modes and not using VR headsets. And so anyone who wants to succeed in the short term to the degree that High Fidelity and Sansar has to cater to desktop mode users who don't have the expensive equipment yet.
Another thing is that you can't really create much things in VR yet. I mean, the tools are still like rough for all platforms, because also the resolution of the headsets doesn't make good for programming. I mean, that's
and nor do the how do you put it? I guess the ergonomics of trying to type with a headset on. I did notice yesterday a little bit of news that I think Logitech is putting out a keyboard adapter that will allow you to see your physical keyboard in your VR headset. It's an interesting idea. It's an HTC tracker.
Yeah. The creative process is really VR is really a great advantage for the creative process. It's if you want to do something within the space, some three-dimensional entity, be it a dress, be it a dog, be it a fox, be it a vase, whatsoever. It's so much more sensual, so much easier, so much more fulfilling for the creative process to actually work on that with your hands as you do in real life. So I do anything I can within VR.
Klaus, this is a very good point, and I know Adam wanted to chime in, but I want to throw this to Jo, because Jo and I, we know that we're going to get 100 comments about, like, what are you talking about? Prim building is exactly doing that. I know what you're saying, Klaus, but Jo, chime in about where this all comes from. I mean, the awesomeness of prim building, of real-time building. Yes, it's not your hands because you don't have controllers, but it is almost the same thing, I would argue. This powerful thing is so revolutionary still. It's unsurpassed.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been trying to load my first thing into Sansar, and it ended up with me almost throwing my new computer out the window. There is, having to learn 3D software is such a high threshold. It's unbelievable. And I'm going to have to spend a few days with a few friends to try and learn this software that breaks my brain. And I'm really not looking forward to it. And that, and imagine how high that threshold is for someone who's got no VR experience whatsoever.
I was actually referring to the ability to, by moving your head and by moving yourself, look at your piece from all sides, like instinctively, and that's so much better. You can't achieve that with a desktop application, be it the most polished one ever. You always have to load it up and then get into the headset.
Klaus, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I just want to make clear for the listener, Klaus, your point is super important. And let's just remind the listener who may not be familiar with the worlds in high fidelity. You can actually build sort of kind of like prim building we're used to in Second Life with the controllers, and you res it mid-air and then you stretch it, or you can do that in Tilt Brush and import it. So absolutely, your point is well taken. But I gotta say, in desktop mode, and for a lot of people, and I'm working on this documentary, people with various disabilities, they all say, and some of them have headsets. It's not an issue of not having access to the headsets. They actually got free headsets because it's a National Science Foundation grant, and they all said, "No, I rather build this in desktop with Second Life, with simultaneous other people with my team with prim building." And if you've ever done prim building in a virtual and real time, you realize that the desktop, the way Second Life implemented that, and Galen, we talked about this on another occasion, it's just ingenious what they accomplished. They accomplished to make something incredibly complex accessible to regular people in a super intuitive way.
And even the Second Life building tools at first can be quite daunting and complicated. People have been complaining about how complicated it is to build for years in Second Life, but once you figure it out, it's easy. So that already is a threshold. So imagine when you have to go to a virtual, but you can't even do that. Building you want to sit down, you can't even raise a cube. We can't even sit down anyway. But
if I may, I think part of the problem is a question of what our expectations are out of building. To illustrate what I mean, anyone who remembers the early days in Second Life, there was no mesh. There was no opportunity to go outside of Second Life and build some complex model and import it.
There was no
now there
sculptures.
is.
There was no sculptures too.
Right, exactly. And my main point is, if you look at it from a consumer standpoint, the people who go to visit public parks or who buy clothing in Second Life, they expect the highest quality that they can find. And right now, the highest quality isn't coming from somebody who's building in prims. It's coming from someone who's building in mesh. So
and that is why we need to find the in-between. Because I can now, in Second Life, build with mesh. In-world, I build it in-world, put a script in it, it's turned to mesh and DA file, easy. Most people don't even know that, but it can be done. And we need something in Sansa that allows you to build in-world, yet somehow end up with mesh.
I want to answer to that quality question. It's I think like building or creating things within VR with using your hands. It's a new art form. We all still have to master. And for example, like regarding the question of precision, I did in for like the I think was the Halloween challenge something. I built the chest burster, this little alien baby which comes out of your belly, and I did that in tilt brush, and I had this approach that I painted it in tilt brush in my own size. So this thing was like really big, and I was a bit disappointed because sometimes my hand would be shaky and it looked like very rough. But when I then downsized it to 5% of its size, it looked like the best fine-tuned jewelry you could find on the planet. So nice. I think we just have to this is the exciting part. We are so lucky to take part in at the moment, is that we all of us develop those new skills and explore and invent how to use this ability to make a computer a digital asset in a physical space or virtual space.
Right. And I think it's fair to say that we're super early on in the realm of tools, hardware and software, tools for building in virtual reality. What's going to happen is a slow and growing crescendo of demand from people like us to have VR building tools and a supply of generation after generation of experimental technologies, and eventually it'll be easier to build in VR.
Let me jump in real quick and bring in Adam also about what we need to acknowledge, because the title of the show is War of the Social VR Worlds. I took some search engine optimization class over the weekend, and they told me if I put troll, war, or breaking, or naked into the title, then I'll get more. Exactly. Right. So, but what you guys are describing, obviously, Chaos is describing something that is functional in high fidelity. I have the utmost respect that actually is working in Sansa. It's currently not yet working, that we build in real time. So when everyone's take on the fact that in Second Life it became aspirational. So it's not about, you guys are right about the quality. People, if they want to buy something, they want the best bang for the buck. But what I found in documenting Second Life for such a long time is that people who never thought that they could do something, because of the ease of use and because it was there, not that everybody uses it, but the people who did, they were empowered. And I know that Philip is following that same path. Before you guys chime in, Adam, you have mentioned on the outset your take on that it might be a lot slower before VR is coming in. Can you tell us a little bit what ScienceSpace is offering people who want to build, and with desktop? I mean, I guess your opinion is that you guys are focusing on the desktop because you're convinced that it'll take a long time before it gets comfortable and mass use. But you guys are offering a lot of stuff in terms of building. And your take on, is that becoming obsolete just because it's cool to build something in 3D space?
No, I don't think so. And frankly, if you want to build in 3D space, we've got some really good tools for that. One of the virtues that we took off to begin with, so I've got to ramble on for a little bit, but we initially looked at building off the top of Unity. Really great thing about Unity, there is a whole bunch of extensions for us. There is mesh modeling tools that are built into Unity. There is Unity's official VR editor. There are all these really cool tools. So if you want to build that way, there is some really fantastic support out there that is better than everything out there. And I'm going to be, I don't know if I can say that, but they really are. The VR building tools in Unity are better than the VR building tools in everything else as far as social virtual worlds go.
Considering the fact, can I add to that?
Yeah.
Considering the thing that Unity has probably a lot more technical man-years put into it since it's a game engine. I mean, there's a store for it, and there's many pre-made assets and everything. They've been pushing a lot of stuff into it.
There's about 2,000 staff working at Unity Technologies, which is about 5 times bigger than Linden Lab. And then there's another 2 million active developers working with Unity who are extending it and building new things for it. So when you want to actually get working this way, you've got a realistic workflow that works really well. So if you export from, say, Tilt Brush, you can use the same shaders as Tilt Brush. So it'll look exactly the same when you bring it into, say, ScienceSpace. That was one of the really clever decisions I think we made. I think of all the decisions that we've made over the long years, that's been the one that's given us the greatest payout, has been leveraging Unity so heavily. But that's getting sidetracked. I think really the thing we were talking about was basically the ease of building, and that's a big problem. That's one that we didn't anticipate how big a problem it would be when we first launched. It's one we've been progressively chipping away this year. But the biggest issue there is that modern game modeling, and that is effectively what we're doing. If we're doing social VR, we are effectively using modern game processors these days. Modeling an object in a modern game takes about 14 days. Give or take. Regardless of whatever it is, it takes about 14 days to actually make a model and get it textured correctly and looking up to AAA standards. There is a reason why that the staff lists on games have blown out to 2,000 plus people. And that's because it takes a lot of time and a lot of skill to produce at that quality level. So there is a big demand for working on ways that we can make those processes easier, that we can make things simpler and make it overall better. So you don't need to have a 3-year degree and 2 weeks to make something that looks up to standard. And I think that's probably the big unsolved challenge that needs to be solved by everyone. Indeed, that's the challenge where you then become a level playing field, something that Second Life was trying to do on the very outset, I would argue. That it really becomes possible for regular Joe and me to build really compelling worlds.
Well, and practically speaking, when Second Life came out, there weren't really building tools that average Joe could possibly use. So they really had no choice but to build in building capabilities.
Hey, Joe, what are you doing with that prim in your hand?
Stop talking about me.
I do have to say that I went to Second Life when I was a youngling. I actually learned 3D modeling.
A young furry.
I mean, I was 17. Don't say that. I'm going to get banned. But yeah, in 06. In any case, I actually learned 3D modeling through Second Life. Second Life was more like a gateway drug for me.
There you go. That is my biggest. Oh my God, that's my mantra. Go ahead, Menthol. Yeah.
So and I also refined my programming talents from it. So there's a lot of things that Second Life brought into the table that allowed me to learn the tools that I know now. I mean, I pretty much mastered Blender.
And that's the biggest criticism on Sansa right now, is that it kind of does not do that. I don't know what Linden Lab was set out to do. If they intentionally said, well, we're going to cater to this market versus this. But what you're describing, Menethol, is this wonderful beauty of displaying this stuff in front of you. And then just, you can go shopping, but you can also do that. And right now, what I see around is not the entry tug, although Chaos would probably disagree with me because High Fidelity is a little bit closer, that it's easier to do stuff.
To me, the same. I'm still in total noob and far away from being such a master as Menethol is, but basically the same happened to me with High Fidelity. Before, like 1 year ago, all I had was like a filmmaker's background. I could do video editing, I could do Photoshop, all 2D stuff. And I was always like, when I needed 3D modeling for movies or whatsoever, I'd always outsource them. And then I got into High Fidelity, and what I learned there, I don't know, I would probably have had to pay like 10,000 euros tuition fee if I wanted to learn that in the free world. And all this by like help of the community, workshops we're doing there, and it's also like you get a nicer incentive if you want to build a Chaos Star to put up in your sandbox. That's a nicer incentive than building like the 3000th cup as a example tutorial. So
yeah, but you could put your name on the cup and then it's branded. By the way, in Sansar in 114 Harvest, just want to tell you guys, you can find Dragster cups. They're really cool. You can purchase them. Actually, Drax Brew beer is for free right now.
I love the beer.
At a special
bestseller, right?
I think Drax Brew beer in Sansa is like the #1 brand.
It's no schnapps.
We all love that smooth taste.
No, Jeremy, I mean, you can take it where you will, but I'm interested in if you were to put money on a horse in a horse race, is Sansar going to succeed or High Fidelity? I know this is a really, really reductive framing, which I really hate that the mainstream media increasingly does for many reasons, many of them obvious. Everything needs to be a boxing match. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, this is a boxing match. Who is better prepared to knock out the opponent, High Fidelity or Sansar?
Well, on a commercial level, I'm not sure, because High Fidelity wants to go with the blockchain thing, and I don't know how commercial that's going to be. And Sansar, is more of the traditional style model for that, kind of economically speaking, I think. So in terms of that, I don't know. Right now, I prefer High Fidelity for the avatars and for the creation, building. Sansar is better for the environments, even though I'm having a rendering issue right now with it. So I think overall it'd be High Fidelity for the most part. I prefer it at the moment, but Sansar has a lot of potential too.
But High Fidelity, when you say the avatars, I'm assuming that there may be people in the audience who have never tried either. So in High Fidelity, you can freely create an avatar. You can take a template, but you can also import stuff and you can just map it on the skeleton. So there's more flexibility. Right now in Sansar, you don't have that. Do you think that people will be willing to, I go back to this question, we discussed it several times prior, but you still have to install, I mean, you have to install stuff if you want to get started. It's a lot more, it's not plug and play, is it? High Fidelity.
No, neither's, I mean, Sansar is a bit more plug and play, but then you have to go outside the headset a lot just to configure things. For me, High Fidelity, the big thing I like about it, which I think will be more, I would imagine, more appealing to people, is that you can see your avatar. I feel more embodied in High Fidelity, and the lips move more naturally. and the gaze is, well, I guess the gaze might be the same now with both worlds, but and you can fly, you can do those things, and I feel more like I'm in the world because I can see my own body. And
I'm totally with Jeremy there. Yesterday I went into Sensor also, and I have to say, it looks amazing. It really looks flawless, beautiful, but I'm a VR junkie. I don't want to get out of the headset only for sleeping and caring for my family. And high fidelity, it just feels so good. I am in that body. I have phantom sensations. I can fly. I can enjoy the rush of speed. It's I love it for the actual physical feeling I'm getting by these optical triggers which are projected onto my eyes.
God, I wish that Professor Tom Berlstoff would be on this show, but because he would tell you again the research that he's doing, and which I'm profiling on this film that I'm so anxious to put out, but it's still so much work, is that a lot of people, actually everybody in Second Life that we profiled and documented in the film, is saying the exact same thing. Even with the screen in between with the screen, right? So for them, that is so fascinating to me. I know exactly what you're saying, Chaos. I don't disagree.
I'm totally sorry. I've never been to Second Life, but I did a lot of like World of Warcraft and Star Wars: The Old Republic and Guild Wars. So I did like all the MMORPGs, and I also like the social part there and the portraying myself, even if you had like minor possibilities to choose between the avatars. But what I'm talking about now is the actual physical bodily sensations I get from VR. I feel it in my body. And if the optical trigger is good, I can even, when I walk into an avatar, this is something I also like a lot about high fidelity. I can actually feel it on the skin of my cheek. And this is a very sensual experience, and I don't want to miss that. And I, even if I want to, I can't manage that with a 2D screen.
Chaos, and that's the fascinating thing. I'm not dismissing what you're saying, but in 10 years of profiling Second Life, folks, they would say that they don't need anything other than a 2D screen. They completely feel exactly what you're feeling, and that's what's to me fascinating on a scientific level. How is Second Life able? And by the way, just quick correction, and I know this is not a completely flawed comparison with World of Warcraft and other games, but Second Life is not a game. You can customize whatever you want. You can build whatever you want. It's not like World of Warcraft. It's not even close to the customization levels in terms of avatars or environments or even the monetary aspect. But the point is, what I find fascinating, we're not going to solve this here, but I think it's a super important discussion going forward with virtual reality and headsets and input technology, is there are millions of people who are perfectly immersed even with the mediation of the screen. And I would argue this is what Richard Bartle argues, is that, this is why am I dreaming of a book when I read a book? It's just black and white on a page. Why am I immersed? Why am I in it? That's frankly the first original virtual world to me is a book or a cave drawing or whatnot.
I actually have to agree with that sense that people in Second Life do tend to feel embodied. To me, I love using my HTC Vive. I love putting that on and poking around. You do feel more like you are there. You feel the spatialness of it. You behave differently. You turn your head constantly looking around, whereas that's kind of a pain in a desktop game with a mouse. So there's subtle differences, but I would agree with Drax on this, that people do feel just as embodied, especially with Second Life, since they can craft their own avatars. They really get a sense of identity.
And that's why we need Second Life in VR. That's what we want, because I've tried Second Life with a headset. It was possible for a short time. I've walked through 1920s Berlin, a sim that I built with my own hands, and I was in my avatar that looks exactly like me in real life, and I was walking through the streets. It was that was the best VR experience I've had so far, regardless of how good all the other places look like, because it was and there's no other freedom anywhere yet that can
But that's what
replicate
Chaos
that.
is describing about high fidelity. And again, I mean, the premise of the program is like who is doing it right and who's going towards the metaverse thing. I mean, that's really kind of what Chaos is describing. I'm so glad that you're on, because Chaos is I think among all of us the one person who is not second. How should I say, like soiled?
Soiled by
Tainted.
Soiled life.
Soiled life. Oh my! There you go.
Can I segue into a topic of avatars?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I mean, like the thing about that brought me into high fidelity is the fact of avatars. I mean, back in the day, high fidelity actually had facial tracking that nowadays is in iPhones. The same tech was in high fidelity. Unfortunately, the company got bought out by Apple, and now it's an iPhone.
Shit.
But that's what brought me into high fidelity, and I really like the fact that I can bring in an avatar if I have the ability. But that's the main fault of high fidelity. I can't, if I did not have knowledge on how to use a 3D program to create an avatar, I wouldn't be able to create an avatar of my liking. And I mean, Sansa has some pretty good customization, and I'm sure Sciencebase, I haven't unfortunately been there that much, so they also have probably customization that anyone can just pick up and start using. But high fidelity has had this issue for a while now. But technically, it's possible, and I've actually proven it, that you can create a base human avatar and then modify it. But then again, someone has to create the base avatar and then do it.
I want to give a final round. The question that we often ask, which I find an important question to ask, which is fascinating. So VR is happening. The headsets are getting better. The wireless headsets are coming. The trackers are getting better. The hardware is getting cheaper. Right now, I think it's a valid argument to say, well, it's very expensive to get in. So there is an inclusion issue. The inclusion issue also involves people with various disabilities and discomforts around headsets. So everybody and their grandma is working on the problem in the hardware field. My question to all of you guys, chime in as you wish, is will the success of VR as a new medium, will it propel the subsegment of virtual worlds forward? Because virtual worlds is different from VR. So VR, you have curated high-end experiences that may be very sort of just doing one thing, or they may be a game. But the question is the kind of concept that Philip is building, or that Linden Lab is building, and that arguably Facebook is building with Spaces. Actually, we had one person scheduled to come in from Facebook Spaces. I hope she'll join us next time. But my point is the type of virtual world where you're free to roam around and choose what you want to do, so which is distinctive from a game and other VR experiences, or even 360. Will this segment that we're all passionate about be propelled forward with the success of VR, or is it just basically a tiny freaking niche? Last word on this, Philip has been saying, we're at the beginning, it's going to be billions of us. He said that 12 years ago. He's saying it again. What he means is that people will want to live in a virtual world. And as much as I want to believe him, after doing this for over 10 years, I'm not so sure. So take it where you will.
Yeah, I think that the answer is maybe. And the reason I don't say a firm yes or a firm no here is because I think that there is a wider split between people who want to consume experiences and people who want to create them than we initially perceived. And I think that split has actually gotten worse over the last couple of years. The problem is that there's not enough reward for actually building cool things. And I think a lot of people go for the easy aspect of consuming something than actually putting in the time to build it. So I would hope so. I hope that's not the case, but it's really hard to say.
I think once we finally have mass adoption, which is going to happen once the headsets get more get cheaper and less complicated. I think virtual worlds or virtual reality worlds will take over Facebook and Twitter and such. It's like, what are people doing now? If they have like 10 minutes on their hands, they go to their Facebook feed and engage in discussions about diapers or cats. Once we will have like, cool, user-friendly goggles, which you can blend from full reality view to augmented to full virtual reality. People won't go to Facebook anymore, but they're gonna hang out in certain virtual world rooms. There's gonna be like the mama diaper discussion room.
Oh, we have that in Second Life.
Yay!
And that's and I think Facebook's gonna go down.
Okay, wait. Sorry, Chaos. I know Jeremy's next, please. But Chaos, I just want to make clear that my question was also more like, and Adam was on point on that. What is to me the gist of the question is, yes, let's assume there will be mass adoption of virtual reality, but the question is really, will intrinsic motivation to do more than just passively consume shit, will that really happen? That's the question, and that's what I'm passionate about. Like what Menethol was saying earlier, like, it's a gateway drug where somebody who may have thought, I mean, that's the experience that I had so many times interviewing people like, oh, I was never encouraged in school, and my parents said, oh, you have no creative bone in your body. All of a sudden, all these tools are kind of splayed out in front of me, and then I realized, oh my God, it's so much fun, and I was just motivated by just doing it because it gives me such satisfaction.
I think that's up to everybody. Like who plays with Snapchat, or who does. Me neither, but because I like doing stuff myself. But I think there's like different degrees of how potent people are in their creativity. There are people who just want to consume and buy stuff and like show off the new Prada design shoes for their avatar, whatsoever. And then there's maybe people who like to create stuff themselves, but who need like easy tools. And then there's people who want to do this on like a professional perfectionist level, and to then go, okay, then I take this road and learn Blender.
We're running out of time. Jeremy, any last words on this subject?
Yeah, I think for social VR to continue and to be popular, it needs to incorporate AR. It needs to be mixed reality. That's really the liberator, I think, here, because not everyone wants to escape into a world. That's part of the thing. I mean, a lot of people don't want to go. It's like opium, right? Not everyone wants to be an opium addict.
At every moment, that is. Yeah.
So I mean, immersive VR might just be a case of turning off the lights in your room, and then you can just go walk away and come in and out, and there'll be no barriers to, there's no big ritual to enter the world or exit the world, and all those kinds of things. Once those barriers to entry and access are removed, I think then it'll become popular, maybe more ubiquitous. But I don't think immersive VR exclusively will be the thing that continues.
I'd actually definitely agree. If social spaces would be popular, it needs to be as accessible as I'm going to refer an anime called Summer Wars.
Fabulous film. Yeah, go ahead.
Summer Wars, every single person could communicate via their avatar, regardless of the device they were using. And sometimes they were wearing a headset, sometimes they were just typing into a computer, or then whatever. And that's a different level of, it's different levels of immersion. But in any case, it's still accessible and it can be done ubiquitously anywhere.
Ubiquitous accessibility, yeah. Last words, Galen, real quick. What do you think?
I think we focus so much on the what, and we have focused almost not at all on the why. When you talk to people outside, who've never been to Second Life or Sense or High Fidelity or whatever, when you talk to them about it, we squee about it. We're look at all this cool stuff, and they're like, "What's there to do?" And we don't really have a compelling answer for most people. I think that's if you ask the question, is there going to be widespread adoption of VR technology? In some ways, there already is. If you discount the headsets and stuff, arguably Second Life, Active Worlds, and all that stuff is VR. But I actually think we should look to the gaming industry for the killer apps. Right now, VR games are starting to take off. They're going to give people the impetus to get the hardware and get used to the idea of VR technology, and that's what's going to bring them to high fidelity, Sansar, Sign Space, and so on and so forth.
Hopefully not Altspace. Wait a minute. We had taped an entire 60 minutes without me saying how much I hate Altspace. And here we go. Just my token little 2 words.
Quick addition. Rec Room is a good example of a game in VR space.
Yeah.
But it's a room. It's not a word. It's a room. I'm already sitting in a room.
Yeah, but it's a start.
Basement.
There's something to do.
It's physical games demonstrating things that really aren't possible in high fidelity or Sansar, as far as I can tell.
Yet.
The Rec Room actually is a great example of something that should be built inside a virtual world.
So you could take that concept and build it in Sansar or in high fidelity on your domain.
Ready, set, go.
Sorry, I think I would add that I think Adam hit the other most critical point, and I'll reiterate it, that the people who provide all this awesomeness for the vast majority of passive consumers have to have some reason, and that translates generally into money. It's very difficult right now in Second Life, of all places, but surely in high fidelity and in Sansar, very difficult to monetize, and therefore very difficult to incentivize some of the really big creative people in the world. They go to game companies. They go to other companies where they can make money.
I think this is also due to the not yet having happened mass adoption, because who is in VR now? Who is in social worlds now? It's like early adopter nerds.
But how many people have signed up for one?
I would argue that isn't the problem, and I would use Second Life as the example. Second Life, arguably, it has been widely adopted, and yet it's still very difficult for people to make money in Second Life. Very few people do.
There's clearly a demand for it, because even though a lot of people have already left Second Life, this wonderful article we were just talking about mentioned how many people signed up for it, and that was millions. So people are interested and curious, and they want to try and want to know.
When I talked with Ebbet 2 years ago, I think it was 14,000 people sign up to Second Life every day. That was 2 years ago. Isn't that amazing? And nobody
that
stays.
Number is that the number of people interested in VR is going up.
Yeah.
But millions of people were interested in social VR before VR headsets were a thing. Just Second Life. So, this is going to grow.
We're just getting started, but I got to wrap it up, because in an hour, as we're taping this pre-taped show, in an hour, I'm going to Sansar and do Atlas hopping streaming, which will be fun. We can continue it there. And I would love to have you guys back. I need to wrap it up. Thank you, Adam, Jeremy, Menethol, Chaos, Galen, and Joe. My last 2 words, of course, is that I wish that we will create worlds where people are not intimidated and where people transform themselves from mere passive consumers to creatives. Philip, and I'm going to link this on the blog, Philip said in a 2007 appearance, I think it was on CNN, I've got to look on it on YouTube, where he says creativity is a dormant muscle that some of us are told they should not use. When we were kids in sandboxes, we didn't care. We just built stuff, and you can see that. If you have kids, you can see it. They paint stuff in first and second grade, and they just do the most amazing stuff. And then self-consciousness creeps in and stuff like that, and societal pressures and whatnot. And they kind of forget that we all have it. So I want to end with this aspirational credo. And yes, maybe I should start a church in Sansar hey, now I know how to monetize this crap. I'm going to start guys, you want to join me? Let's do this.
I'll give up all my earthly possessions.
Hey, PayPal, Sansar dollars, whatnot. It's gonna work. Well, thank you all, and I'll see you in this or the other world.
Sounds good, Drax. Thank you.
Oh, you made me cry, Drax.
Chaos, come to the service on Sunday morning.
The Church of Drax.
I am putting it on in hi-fi as well.
Register the domain right now, and then sell it back to me. Okay.
Cause he
Pop it
did
in.
not love her like she hoped he had. He took off her dress, he made her confess down in the grass. And he made her turn to, he made her knees burn into leaves in the grass. He let her pass, he made a mess. They try to take what I thought was good. They try to break what they think I should. They paint my colors black and white, and they give me darkness instead of light. They tell me how to walk this world. They call me a child, they call me a girl. They try to tell me I am wrong. This is not where I
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Jo Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Time Portal, SL Artist, Warbug, Bay City You Know for Kids, 01 Heavy Industries Corporation, Extraordinary, Ionic, Maven Homes, Giza Creations, Botanical, Strawberry Sing, Abranimations, Eros Avatars, Caravel Design, The Cube Republic, What Next, Landscapes Unlimited, Fallen Gods Incorporated, and Death Row Designs. Thumbnail by Justin Esparza. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.